that'll have to do. This is as far as I go with making knives. I've made a few. I've made more than a couple, and what I did was I had a bunch of this kind of stuff left over, which is it was a big file. This is made by Arcade, and it's a half round on the top. You can see where it's a half round, big hairy Farrier's rasp. And what I did was I put this in my forge, brake drum forge, and banged it down and came out with something like this, which is kind of cool. It's still got the markings on it, so you can see how it looks really kind of neat. Putting a handle on these are going to be a pain in the ass, I can tell. This is what I ended up with, a little skinning knife. Now that's a pretty cool little deal right there. And on the back side you can see it's got the file markings. People like that, and I like that too. It looks pretty cool. And so what I came up with for a handle on these things is something like this. And I guess most people don't. And the thing is, you're gonna get this convex grind on one side, and it's gonna be flat on the other side. See? And so that's more like the Scandi grind on one side and a convex grind on the other. Kind of cool. It's very unique. And so what I did was I took some of this Cocobolo stuff and made some scales for it. And I haven't got it all done. I haven't got it all glued up, and I haven't heat treated this actually, and I haven't finished this at all. But there's what it looks like from the top, and you can see that's kind of weird looking. It's very different, but really, I mean, I think that's what makes it kind of neat. Is it's so very different. You're not going to see a knife like that. People aren't going to make, but it feels really good. The other file knives that I made, I took elk hunting. I got a 5x6 this year, and I gutted and skinned that sucker out with 2 knives that I made. I think this is going to be a pretty cool little knife. In fact, these 3 are already sold. I haven't even finished them yet. And a guy saw them, loved them, said he wanted to buy them. So, you know, and this one here is going to have, the configuration is pretty much the same as this other one, where it's going to sit a little differently. But it's got a cool look to it, and really has a great feel. You know, once the scales are all on there, has a great little feel to it. That's going to be a cool little knife. But that's the view from the top. You know, it's just very unorthodox looking, I guess you'd call it. So even though I don't like shiny knives, I decided to go ahead and polish up these a little bit. I'm using 400 grit on them before I temper them and heat treat them and temper them. All I'm doing is taking some 400 and going over these things like this, and just trying to get most of the real rough scratches. I don't like shiny knives. I kind of like the dull ones, and so I may get this finished and just blue the thing anyway, because I think it would kind of look neat. But I guess it does have these little file tips from the rasp in there, so you know, that might look kind of cool if it's shiny and then has these dark tips in it. So we'll see how that works out, but I'm not finished yet. I have plenty left to do. That's the whole thing about this. None of the edges are straight. Nothing is perfect, because if it, you know, if you want it perfect, well shit, just take it down to your local milling machine guy and have him mill you one. You know, they'll just laser cut or plasma cut out a pattern for you, and then they'll mill it all out and it'll be perfect. But I don't want it perfect. I want it to look like I made it, which it does, and it's going to be a useful tool. And I mean, shit, anybody can buy a knife. This is handmade, man. So I guess that's why people like them. I've sold a bunch of my knives already. So there's the knife in there. It's tempering. That's going to take about an hour. Well, I put the copper pins in, and I'm pinning this one in copper. I think it's going to look pretty good when it gets together. And the way I'm doing it is I'm taking these pins in there. I've already got the scales pretty much done. So what I'm doing is I'm just grinding off a little bit of these pins to make them even. So grind that off like that and then push it through so it's flush. I'm kind of using a razor blade here to hold this thing because it gets kind of hot. There you go. And see, now they're pretty flush. Now when I glue this thing up, it's going to be pretty much to the finished size. All the surfaces are nice and smooth, and all I have to do then is just do the final sanding on here, which will sand these pins flush, and they're pretty flush now. And then the knife's going to look like that. I mean, that is going to be one sweet knife. Totally different on the top, you can see. It's just totally different look. But you can also, when you look at it, you see that and this, and you just know that's a file. You know it was. And this I'm going to blue. Once I get this all sanded out, I'm going to blue this back so that the only thing shiny is this. Well, I got two of these file knives done that I was working on. These are the ones that I have finished. Very unique knives. They don't have the typical lines mating up at the top. Sort of looks like that off center. But I gotta tell you, these knives feel really good in your hand. And even if you're left-handed, your thumb goes right here. That feels really great. And the back side of this is a file. You know, it's a file knife. And I left a little bit of file down here, and I did shine that up. I was gonna blue it, but you know what? I do think that in this case it kind of looks better. This is the other one that came out of the same file, and on the top of this one, you'll notice that it's just a little different. This one, the file markings run all the way down the top and sticks out a little bit here on the bottom, but I shaped the scales so that it sort of mated it up. You can see how that fits on the back. Hope you can. But it's real comfortable in your hand, right-handed or left-handed. It just fits in your hand. That fits perfectly for what you're going to do with it. And that's why people seem, and everyone I've showed these to, they love these things. They can't believe that was a file, and they just can't believe how good they feel. They look at it kind of funny at the beginning, and they say, well, it's not the way a knife should look. Well, it isn't. It's different, and that's why I like it. Now this is going to be the big brother to those. This came off a different file. This was a big Farrier's rasp, and it's gold right now. I heat treated these night before last, and I messed up because I heated them for 180 degrees for an hour, let it cool, and then did it for 220. And what happened was the metal was too hard. It was still too hard, and I didn't get a good gold color out of it. It was too hard, and when I sharpened the edge on these, it chipped. If you looked at it, when I sharpen, I look at everything under a magnifier, at least a 10 power, sometimes a 20 power magnifier, to make sure the edges are coming together. Well, those edges were chipping, and the file was just too hard. And so what I did was I threw all of them back in the oven for 400 degrees for an hour, and I got this nice gold straw color on these things. And when I sharpened them up, these came out super sharp, and they're gonna hold an edge for a long time.